Just want to check. Just wanted to check in. Everybody can see and hear me okay?
Yep, good.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so thank you everybody for attending and welcome to my Culminating project, which is entitled The Effects of Art Therapy on a Marginalized Person's Self-Esteem, a Case Study. So just to give a quick overview today, I'm going to introduce my project to you. I'm going to talk about the arts practice that I undertook during this project. I'm going to talk about some of the research that I did on the literature review. Then I'm going to get into the method, the data collection, and the analysis of the project. I'm going to talk about some of the ethics. Then we're going to get into the findings and results, which is the fun bit with the client artwork. Then we're going to talk about any limitations, contributions to the field, my recommendations for further research. I would like to start with a quote. I think that this is a very powerful quote talking about really how powerful art therapy is. Art therapy integrates the arts in a safe, non-judgmental setting to facilitate personal growth and healing. To use the arts expressively means going into our inner realms to discover feelings and express them through visual art. This process fosters release, self-understanding, insight, and awakens creativity and transpersonal states of consciousness. So, introduction. Throughout my life, I have been an advocate for marginalized people and passionate about social justice. When I was 8 years old, my sister was born with severe disabilities. As I adapted to my new big sister role, I realized that she needed someone to be her voice and advocate for her needs. From that moment on, that was what I became. I have learned that those who are most vulnerable in society are often devalued and have their voices ignored. To receive a diagnosis or treatment or services that they need, there are often many obstacles to overcome, including stigma and bias. Throughout my practicum and internship, I have worked with adults who are categorized as having severe and persistent mental illness, which is SPMI, as it will be referred to throughout the presentation. The majority of my clients have experienced stigma and bias because of their diagnoses and have lower self-esteem due to these experiences. I wanted to explore the use of art therapy with this population and see if self-esteem could be impacted through the use of art making. For my arts practice, I use digital art and photography to reflect on the research process and the sessions that I conducted with the participant. I used art making to process my thoughts, experiences, and emotions. I was inspired by reflections and making connections. I also explored aspects of transference and countertransference that came up during the process. This came up from the perspective of the lived experience of a marginalized voice, which for myself means not being part of the dominant culture in the USA. It also means being a person that has disabilities and a person who is part of the LGBTQIA+ community. I included in the design of this presentation my arts practice. So beginning in January of this year, I started working on how I was going to present my project. So all the elements of the design here have evolved through the lens of the research process. There is significance and symbolism in each multi-layered element of the design of the presentation. So I hope you enjoy seeing all of these elements to it as we work through. And as I go through the slides, I have put in a few more of my arts practice art pieces just to add some more interest into it. So for the main part of my arts practice, I designed a magazine cover. I was imagining that my experiences were the focus of the issue. I imagined what it might look like if the readers who were part of the dominant culture had been highly anticipating my interview and attached value to my voice. I used the label of alien as an inspiration for the design, since that is my status here in the USA, and often that is exactly how I feel too. The headline of "She's Not From Here" reflects the micro and macro aggressions of daily life. Sometimes I can't breathe the air. In relation to the somatic response to experiences of stigma and feeling vulnerable. Art saved me. The role of art and being an art therapist in helping me process my feelings and start to feel that maybe I really belong here. For the first part of my literature review, I wanted to talk some more about the term severe and persistent mental illness, SPMI. This was introduced by the National Institute of Mental Health in 1987 to replace the previous term, which was chronic mental illness. The change in terminology was designed to provide a congruent federal and state definition for this population for several reasons. This includes alignment with the Social Security Administration's definition of disability, social and economic support programs, policy planning, and data reporting. The critical aspects of SPMI are defined as the 3 Ds, namely diagnosis, disability, and duration. The specific measurements can also vary at the state and local level. The criteria used by community mental health agencies in New Hampshire is defined by New Hampshire's Code of Administrative Rules, Part HE-M 401.05. Within these rules, this advises that an individual can be classed as having an SPMI if they have been diagnosed by a qualified mental health professional and experienced a severe functional impairment for more than a year due to their diagnoses. There are a number of diagnoses included in this criteria, and some examples are schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. The criteria of severe functional impairment is determined by assessing the person's ability to function in their activities of daily living, which includes interpersonal functioning, adaptation to change, concentration, task performance, and task pace. The research shows that the stigma directed towards this population is so impactful that it is experienced as a secondary illness or a secondary diagnosis. In a study by Jenkins in 2009, it found that 86 to 96% of the participants had acute awareness of this stigma in daily life. The nature of stigma is complex. According to Thorncroft et al., the studies show that there is enacted stigma and also felt stigma. Enacted stigma are events of negative discrimination, whereas felt stigma includes the experience of shame of having a disorder and the fear of encountering enacted stigma. These things are both associated with lower self-esteem. This can also lead to several other adverse symptoms, such as social withdrawal, self-neglect, loss of motivation, and also loss of initiative. A study of individuals with schizophrenia discovered that the disclosure of the diagnosis led to them experiencing that they were considered incompetent, irresponsible for their actions, and equipped with below average intelligence. Facing such reactions as these made the participants feel devalued and lowered their self-esteem. In a review of studies from 1999 to 2007, this demonstrated quantifiable data to support that art therapy is effective in the treatment of low self-esteem. However, there's limited existing art therapy research with the population who are categorized with SPMI. There are limited results available, but these do show benefits that include strengthening the sense of self, increasing coping skills, and having a more resilient response to stigma. For the method, I used a qualitative case study design using arts-based research. The design and structure of the research went through many iterations based on timescale recruitment, IRB approval, and agency reviews. The investigative process included design and planning, approvals, recruitment, then redesign, reapprovals, implementation, data collection, data analysis, and findings. The research took place in my office at my internship site, which is a community mental health agency in New Hampshire. My role was facilitating the sessions with the participant, including guidance on art making, discussion, conducting assessments, making observations through notes, and art making alongside the client. Brown 2022 states, arts-based approaches are employed because they allow researchers to get closer to the participants' experiences and emotions. They help participants express their experiences differently, and they support participants' processes of reflection and meaning making. Here is an example of part of the flyer that I used to recruit participants as well. So on to data collection and analysis. So through 5 art therapy sessions, the participant created artwork depicting their lived experiences, identities, and strengths. I collected data through my observations in the sessions, making notes and sketches, and art making as mentioned. I used 2 assessment tools for measuring the participants' self-esteem. Firstly, the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, which is comprised of responses to 10 statements, the results of which are measured on a 30-point scale. An example of one of the statements is, on the whole, I am satisfied with myself. These statements are answered on a 4-point Likert scale, ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. The second assessment tool that I used was the single item self-esteem scale. This uses one question and is an efficient and easy to administer measure of global self-esteem. The participant has to rate their level of agreement with the following statement: I have high self-esteem. This is rated using a 7-point Likert scale. It ranges from number 1, which is not very true of me, to number 7, very true of me. The project required a full IRB review due to the level of risk being assessed as high, and this is because the population that I was working with was categorized as vulnerable. The IRB application was submitted in October and approved in December last year. The original design was for 5 to 20 participants. This did pivot to a 1-person case study. So an IRB amendment was necessary, and this was completed earlier this year and approved. The project was reviewed and approved by the CEO, Quality Assurance Department, and Director of Adult Services at the site. 2 informed consent forms were completed, an Antioch version and an agency version. The data was collected and stored anonymously. So findings and results. In the first session, the participant was asked to think about the qualities that they liked in themselves and draw a representation of this. The participant was only able to provide one example of a quality they liked about themselves, and that was honesty. They did not find a way to express this other than writing the word honest. In terms of the scoring on these, on the scales, they actually scored themselves a 1 in both of the scales, which is the lowest score that you can have in terms of their self-esteem levels. I noted in the session that participants spoke in a quiet voice, and I noted the following statements. I don't really like anything about myself. I've never thought about myself as someone who matters. I never ask for what I want or I need because I don't think it's important. I don't think that my voice matters. I feel lost, and I hate what I see in the mirror. In the second session, the participant was asked to think of a character from a book, movie, or video game that they admire and the reason why. The client was asked to draw the character or draw something that represents their admirable qualities. After the experiential, we discussed the character, who the participant said was fun, smart, strong, resilient, and not afraid to be themselves. We talked about this, and we talked about if the participant could recognize any of the good qualities that they talked about for the character in themselves. Could they relate to that at all? The participant said, "I'm not sure, but maybe. I guess I could say I'm smart." During this session, the participant spoke in a louder voice and was talking and engaged more, definitely towards the end of the session. In the third session, we explored the theme of growth and the participant reflected on past experiences. They noted that they have moved home 6 times in the past 8 years. And they said, "But that's been happening since I was 9. I'm used to it." We reflected on what qualities one might need to be used to it. The participant said, "I guess you have to be pretty resilient." This led into us working on a Garden of Strengths experiential. I noted that this was the first time that participant had used colour in their artwork. Previous to that, they had been offered a lot of different art materials and had just stuck to using a pencil very lightly on the page. Although the participant did not do a large garden, the flower that they did was detailed and it was coloured in the participant's favourite colour. In the discussion after the experiential, the participant said, "I thought about the garden. It's just one flower on its own, but it's surviving and it's growing." As you can see, the participant drew the artwork larger on the page. It is more defined and it has some vibrant colour. I reflected on the change between the artworks on session 3 to session 1 and 2. And from that, I felt that that really demonstrated that the client's self-esteem was growing. In the fourth session, the participants said that they thought that they were pretty strong and they recognized that they had gone through a lot of change. They drew on what strength looked like and they reflected on this in relation to their life experiences. They were asked to create a representation of their strength on the page. The participant drew the tree. The participant used a few different colours, and I felt the drawing was strong and it was more expressive than they had been previously. In session 5, the participant was again asked to think about things they like about themselves and represent those things in their art making. They were able to provide 5 qualities that they liked about themselves. The participants said that they were honest, smart, strong, resilient, and self-aware. In the session, the participants said the following things: "I realize that I have worthwhile qualities. I've started to ask for what I need, and I've started to say what I don't like. It's really hard because I've never done that before." The participant advised that since they were a child, they have never asked for what they wanted or needed because they didn't think anyone would care. They said it felt good to say what they wanted. They used more colour in this session. They integrated aspects of previous drawings and added some new elements. They seemed like they were really enjoying the art making. They were more animated and more confident. I noticed a real growth and a difference between session 1 and session 5, which really reinforced the feeling that the client's self-esteem had improved. In terms of the scoring from the assessments, for the Rosenberg self-esteem scale, Scoring is from 0 to 30, as I said. The first session, the participant was at a 1. By the 5th session, the participant was at a 13. 15 on the scale is considered in the range of normal self-esteem. So the participant was just about below the normal range, but that was a huge improvement. For the single item self-esteem scale, in session 1, as I mentioned, the participant was at a 1. The question was, I have high self-esteem, and the participant answered, not very true of me. In the 5th session, the participants scored themselves at a 3, which again is almost in what would be considered the normal self-esteem range. In terms of the limitations of the study, this was a single subject case study design. It was inherently focused on the expressed thoughts and feelings and behaviours of one participant. Observations and analyses will be filtered through my worldview, values, and perspectives, so there will be subjectivity. This is the nature of qualitative research, and this is also viewed as a strength since the data that is collected is incredibly detailed in observations and insights that can't be gathered from other types of research. It is hard to determine whether a case study represents a larger body of similar participants because it only examines one individual. As a result, the findings drawn in one instance might not apply in another instance. So in terms of contributions to the field, this is a marginalized and understudied population in the field of art therapy. Through my research, I found around about 20 studies using art therapy practices with clients in the category of SPMI. So this research will contribute to the limited body of knowledge in the field and add to the existing evidence that supports the efficacy of art therapy as an evidence-based intervention for this population. So for my recommendations, the art therapy field requires further research with all populations, but particularly, as I mentioned, this one. If I could further my research, I would like to conduct another qualitative arts-based research project. I would like to increase the scope of the study design to include other participants. And I would like to explore the effects of art therapy on self-esteem and also other aspects of the identity. I would include group art therapy sessions, and I would also love to include a culminating art exhibition. I would love to explore how adopting an identity of the artist impacts the participants' feelings about themselves and the felt and enacted stigma levels that they experience. So, in closing, I just wanted to give a small update regarding the participant. They did let me know that since we completed our sessions, they had taken up a regular exercise routine and they were really proud of themselves. They also said that they've been volunteering for 2 nights at a video game store. So in closing, as Gilroy 2006 observed, research of all kinds is usually replicated and therein lies its strength. Repetition either highlights erroneous results or confirms true results. The findings of several small experiments can be combined to produce the strong composite critical mass of outcome research, and that can be represented in systematic reviews. Research is valuable no matter how small. And I would like to add that the site that I conducted the research at is interested in extending their art therapy program on the basis of this research. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the following beings who've supported me in achieving this project. my beautiful children, Aurora, Xanthi, and Ezio. Thank you for your endless patience, sweetness, and ability to entertain yourselves, maybe not quite how I'd always choose, while Mummy worked. My partner Phil for supporting me in a million ways. My mum, dad, family, and friends for encouraging me. And of course, my dog Bluebell, who's been by my side every moment. In fact, I think she deserves an honorary master's degree in art therapy. Dr. Morrison, Dr. Donahue, Dr. Collins, and Dr. Hartman, thank you all so much for your leadership, your support, and your guidance throughout this process. My supervisor and mentor, Christine, at Greater Nashua Mental Health. And of course, my cohort 1 peers and my best friends, Madison, Savannah, and Kelsey. Thank you to you all. And these are my references. Thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Snaps for you. Good job, Jody. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. I will leave the recording on just for a little bit while we ask questions, and I will let you field them so anyone can jump in as needed.
Jody, I heard you say that there's a change to services offered at your site based on this research. That's incredible. What do you think will happen next?
Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to conduct group art therapy at the site because I'm going to be employed there going forwards. And I'm hoping to be able to do group art therapy on a Wednesday morning each week. So I am hoping that I can use that as a springboard to maybe do some more art therapy sessions, do some more group art therapy, maybe even research. I don't know. I'm hopeful and I'm excited.
That's incredible. Well done, Jody.
Thank you.
Jody, I'd like to ask you, even though I know the answer, but I'd like to hear more. What did you learn about yourself through this process most?
I learned I can do research. Research was scary for me. I am not really a mathematical data statistics kind of person. When I first started doing research with Dr. Donahue way back not last fall, I think the fall before, I was really intimidated by research and it made me really worried about my master's project. I just didn't know if I was going to be able to produce something that was worthwhile. But then Dr. Donahue taught me about arts-based research and I saw the light. So I was excited to be able to use an aspect of quantitative research as well in terms of the scales. I loved the arts-based research process. I love the design of that, the observations, the detail that it can give you, the insights that it can give you that other aspects of research really can't offer. So I actually really enjoyed this project and I was very passionate about the topic, which I think is so important because research it's very intense and you really do need to be passionate about what you're researching. So yeah, I feel like I'm actually a researcher now.
Jody, I am in the process of heading to work, so sorry. I am going to turn my video back off, but I was curious, how did you go about finding your participant?
So I advertised at the 2 locations that we have in the agency, and I used flyers. I showed a little example of part of one. So I used those flyers, I put them up kind of around the offices, in the hallways, in the waiting rooms, and I asked any potential participants to contact me, and then went through a kind of screening process. As it was, I was only able to secure the 1 participant, which was what started the pivoting process to a case study. But actually, I learned a lot about doing a case study that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't have gone in this direction. And I felt that the insights from that were so valuable that I actually was really, really pleased that it did turn into a case study. Thank you for the question, Stephanie. And I noticed that Dr. Collins had put something there too. So the question was, what approach did you take to capturing your participants' voice? Did you record your sessions and transcribe them? We were just talking about this in research class yesterday. So yes, part of the informed consent process was being able to take photographs and record the sessions. Wanted to make that very, very clear and transparent and make sure the participant had agreed to that through the informed consent and was comfortable. During the sessions, I still checked in with the participant each time to make sure that they were comfortable with the recording, that they were comfortable with photographs being taken of the artwork. So yes, I recorded the sessions, they were transcribed, and then I used the service on, I recorded them on Teams because that's what we use at my site, and there's a transcription service that goes along with that. So I used that and then went back through the sessions and pulled out the quotes that I felt were the most impactful. I think the hardest part of that process is that there is so much data, there are so many observations. I could have done the presentation for an hour just talking about all the observations that I had, but I tried to pick the most impactful that showed that I felt the participants' self-esteem was increasing throughout the sessions. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Collins, for that question. Grace.
Fabulous job. I found your presentation quite moving. And yeah, I kind of wanted to pose the same question that Dr. Donahue asked Savannah yesterday, knowing how wonderful you've been, giving me advice as, as the next cohort, I guess. Yeah, any other advice or words of wisdom for those of us in here who are about to start this project in the fall?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with what Savannah said in that I mentioned earlier, be passionate. You really have to pick a topic you're really passionate about, because this is going to be an intense process. It's going to take up a lot of your time, and it's so important to feel passionate about it. When you're entering into the research process, I would say, dream big, really, channel your passion and think about all the questions that you have. Think about everything you want to learn. Then once you've done that, review all of that and try to then funnel it down. What I found that was at the start of the process, I had so many questions and so many things I wanted to learn, but I had to bear in mind that we had 2 semesters to plan and execute this, and 2 semesters goes very, very quickly. So as much as I wanted to do so many things with this research, I really had to begin the process of funneling down to what are the core elements I want to achieve with this research project. And I think that's very important. Planning your time, planning your schedule, and just being aware of the fact that processes like recruitment, they take a lot longer usually than you think they're going to take. So I would say allow as much time as you can for IRB approval, particularly if you need a full approval, because there's a lot of detail that goes into that process. For recruitment, because that is an unpredictable element of the project. So try to get into your recruitment phase as soon as you possibly can to give yourself the best chance of capturing the amount of participants you want to. And then finally, I would say try to leave as much time as you can for your data analysis, because particularly if you're using like qualitative research, arts-based research, you have so much data. There are so many things that you're observing and noting. There are so many aspects to it. So to get the best value out of your research, you really want to leave a lot of time for your data analysis too. But I'm available, my contact info, and I'm happy for anyone who's in the, following cohorts. Please do reach out. I would love to help and advise you with anything that you need.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you're able to see Dr. Morrison's hand, and I think Savannah's
Oh,
hand are also up. Yeah, there we go.
Dr. Morrison, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Jody, this was a beautiful presentation. So well done. And such a through line for you throughout the whole program. All 3 years, every single presentation has been gorgeous. And this is just showing your full artistry in relationship and relational aesthetics, and also just in visual beauty. So thank you so much. And I love how respectful you spoke of people who are diagnosed with mental illness, and also the case study process. I feel like art therapy, a large part of our history and research comes through in case study. That's how we learned from the early art therapists, and that's how the field has really been built, is by like using research and seeing how we do the work through a case study. So thank you so much for continuing that thread. It's both historic and, with arts-based research, very new. So it's a beautiful bridge that you made there. And then also I feel a beautiful bridge with how you shared so beautifully your inspiration, which was a story I had never heard of your sister. So that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that and for this presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morrison. I appreciate it. And Savannah.
Hi, you did amazing. I'm so proud of you. Secondly, I know you're an amazing sister. You're clearly an amazing researcher, but I'm wondering if you felt that your research helped add depth to your relationship with your sister or with your clients in any way.
Yes, absolutely. It really did. I think going into the literature review, just the amount of data that's available that just shows the impact of stigma. I knew that this was a significant impact, but I tried to pull out like the most powerful points for me, which was the secondary diagnosis of stigma. Like that's how much of an impact it has on people's lives. I had witnessed that from advocating for my sister, but just seeing the statistics there was really powerful for me. And I read a lot of comments from the participants just really talking about the impact of the stigma and the impact of the felt and the enacted stigma. And it was heartbreaking. It really was heartbreaking for me to read what they were saying, particularly in relation to not wanting to share their diagnosis and being very, very reluctant to share that because of the response that they would get, both within, unfortunately, within the field of mental health, medical health, and the general public. And through my work with, particularly in the emergency room, because sometimes we go over to the emergency room to help with clients who need a mental status exam. I actually experienced it firsthand there. Some of the staff there were very derogatory towards the client that I was going there to see. And that was very heartbreaking to hear too. So I felt that I had tied in a lot of my personal experiences to the research, and then talking to the participant firsthand as well. Yeah, it was very powerful. Thank you, Savannah, for the question.
Well, thanks, Jody. There's probably much more you want to discuss. So hopefully that will be in the next phase in your site and your position and everything. So I'm going to stop the recording here. And we will kind of end, but I would like to